Pause. Take a break. Reflect on life. Remember, you are strong. You are enough. You are capable. You are blessed. And you are loved. Your moment of greatness starts now.
Life is too short to operate at less than your full potential. That's why in this episode, we will learn about the performance mindset from a leadership and performance coach, a personal strategy officer, and operations and strategy executive. Welcome to the show, Aaron. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for the intro. Thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode for a Soulful conversation. I'm also looking forward to speaking with you and looking forward to, improving my mindset also. I'm sure by the time this episode ends, I'll be a better person than right now at this
Ooh,
moment.
that's a lot of pressure. Let me try and live up to that. Let's do it.
Yes, no pressure, but please, yeah, live up to it. Yeah, but I would like us to start off from your experience so far. Like, while preparing for this conversation, I found out that you have this background in leading teams and organizations, and you've done that for years and ages, even
Mm.
from your job title and description also. So I'd like to learn how this background has inspired you and helped you to start your performance mindset approach also.
Yeah, sure. So for me, it started early. I was put into a leadership position at 23 years old. I was able to kind of work my way up, just worked really hard, grinded, had a couple of lucky breaks, and I found myself as part of a senior executive leadership team where I was directly responsible helping run a $1 billion organization all before the age of 30.
Mm.
And while that may sound like the headline, I think what sits underneath that was I'm confident that I've made every mistake there could have possibly been made as a young up and coming executive. And so, one of the things that I would say that I missed early on in my career, that as I matured, as I developed, and as I gained more awareness and clarity, it started to occur to me that it's really all about people. And for for those professionals or leaders that have the mindset that I can do it all myself, or I'm the smartest person in the room, that's just a short-sighted way to look at it. And so once I really started to identify that everything starts and stops with people, getting the right people in the right place and surrounding them with a supportive culture that challenges them and helps them become the best version of themselves. And as my career continued to progress, the quote that I could really pinpoint that was a driver for me was, why do some people elevate and find new levels of achievement, new levels of success, and then some people that just don't? They never achieve what they want to. And there's a host of different reasons, but it really all came down to mindset. And the quote that I'm referring to is over 100 years old, and it's just as applicable today as it was
Mm.
100 years ago. And it was from Henry Ford, who says, whether you think you can or think you can't, you will always be right. And I think that's such an enlightening quote that carries so much wisdom in such few words, because it all starts with mindset. And it all starts with the thoughts, the beliefs that then drive the emotions and behaviors that can either generate amazing results or get you trapped in the comfort zone, making you play it safe and then resulting in you never living up to your full potential. So now what's led me to launching my firm is I want to exclusively work with emerging leaders, entrepreneurs, executives, and help them reach their next best version, help them make sure they don't get trapped in that comfort zone, and help them cultivate the mindset that takes them to their next version of greatness at a much more accelerated rate than they would otherwise be able to do on their own.
Are you enjoying this episode? Kindly subscribe, share, and leave a review. Thank you.
That's so beautiful. I love the quote from Aaron Ford that you quoted. Like, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you always be right. You
You'll
always be
always be
right.
right.
Yes, yes. And I think from this podcast and from this conversation we are having right now, I think we are trying to motivate each other and motivate others who are listening that you can do it. And that's why we need that performance mindset to know, yes, these are my goals and I'm able to achieve them, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll put a different spin on that, and I think it's something that can drive a good conversation, and it is around that word motivation. And
Mm,
let's burst a little bubble here for a second, if we can. And look, we've been grown up to believe, and we've always been told it's like be motivated, right? That's a good thing. Have motivation to achieve results, and I'd like to propose respectfully a different perspective about motivation. I want us to, for a second, to sit back and think about motivation as being your business partner. And from that standpoint, motivation, it tells us up front that it's not going to be there full time for us. Motivation is not going to be there when we need it the most. Motivation is going to show up when it wants to, and when it wants to show up is usually going to be when it's easy, right? It's
mm,
everybody can be motivated when the environment's easy and things are going well. When you need motivation is when all those elements disappear. When you hit the rough patch, when you have that bad night of sleep, that's when motivation is not going to be there. So, in that sense, I like to warn people about motivation and saying, if you performing at your highest level is dependent on motivation, you're going to be in trouble because motivation is going to be inconsistent. It's going to ebb and flow. So if you depend on motivation, at best, you'll be an
mm,
inconsistent performer. What I
mm.
recommend you replace that with is discipline. And I think when you can find the right systems, the right frameworks, you can build the right schedule for yourself, you know, motivation is going to be there to negotiate with you. Discipline, there's nothing to negotiate. It's either you're going to execute the program or you're not. And so,
Mm.
what I like to recommend people doing is replace motivation with discipline. Because if you stay disciplined, it's going to be there for you every single day of the week. The good days, the bad days help you do what's required to get better, even on the days where you least feel like doing it. If motivation happens to show up that day, great. It's the cherry on top, but don't depend on it. Don't even need it. Don't even wish that it was there. Just treat it as a bonus when it is there, but instead make sure that you've got that internal drive to stay disciplined. Stay disciplined to what you commit to, stay disciplined to the process, stay disciplined to doing the things that are required to get better. Not just when it's easy, but when it's most difficult.
Yeah. Not only when it's easy, but also when it's very difficult. And if I understood you correctly, does being disciplined means having systems in place, or how can I be disciplined? How can I stay disciplined?
hmm Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, I think it first starts with what are you being disciplined to, or what are you being disciplined with? Um, and I think that poses the big question is take the randomness out of it, right? And so I think it opens up a whole different can of worms, especially when we think about, let's think about goals for a second, right? And we're approaching a time of year where guess what everybody does? Everybody sets a New Year's resolution, right?
Mhm.
This is the time of the year where all of us get the most excited about personal development and growth goals, right? Where everybody's everybody in late December and early January is walking around talking about, here's my New Year's resolution. What's yours? But here's some statistics for you. Because of how poorly we as a society set and structure goals, what we typically see, and surveys have shown this, is that roughly 24-25% of people openly admit that they're behind on their goal by the second week of January. By the end of the first month, about 65% of people have already said they've given up on their goal. And by the end of the year, only about 5% of people can even say that they feel somewhat successful, that their New Year's resolution worked. Said differently, the goals that we get most excited about every single year has a 95% failure rate.
Wow.
95% failure rate. So let's back up now and ask ourselves, why is that?
Mm.
And when you think about these goals, what do people fixate on? They're fixated on the outcome. They're fixated on the end result. They're fixated on achieving the actual goal. And while that's good to at least initially set the goal, you've got to ignore that. Once the goal's set, now the focus needs to go to the process. What needs to be true for the goal to happen? So if you want to lose, let's just say 25 pounds in 3 months, great. What does week one look like? What does week two look like? How are you going to track and measure progress? What is going to be the system, the process, the more shorter term milestones that are going to keep you on track after week one, after week two, after week three, to always make sure that you're on plan to be able to achieve that output. The goal,
Mm.
simply stated, is just what happens at the end after you execute the plan, after you put in all the right inputs. So now let's go back to, how do we stay disciplined? It's having the plan. It's not being so fixated on just what you want to achieve and just the outcome, but 99% of the focus needs to be on, what do you need to do today, this week, this month, to make the goal happen. And if you can focus on that, you now know what to stay disciplined on. You stay disciplined on the inputs to make sure at the end of this, you get the output you're looking for. But if all you're focused on is just the output, that first bad day, that first bad week, you're going to feel like, oh, the only thing I'm looking at is that goal on the top of the mountain. It looks too far away now. I'm just going to give up. And so, said differently, focus on the very next step. Don't focus at the top of the mountain. Focus on what step you're going to take next, and then the next one, and then the next one. And it's staying disciplined to keep showing up day after day. That's how you install discipline. It starts with a good plan, good process, good system on the day over day to ultimately get to where you want to go. But that's just what naturally happens after you stay disciplined to the plan.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've learned so much from that already. Like, what do I have to do right now? What do I have to do today? What do I need to do right now to even move to the next step towards achieving my goal in life? Having that
Yeah,
system in place, having that in mind helps me.
I think you just said it perfectly. And so with any goal that we have, I think the immediate first question that we have to ask is, what needs to be true, right? So
Mm.
any goal is good, but what needs to be true for me to hit that goal? What needs to be true by when? So if you've got a 6 month goal, great. Where do you need to be after 1 month so that you're on track to be on to achieve your 6 month goal? Where do you need to then be at 3 months, at 4 months, at 5 months? That's what you're working backwards to. And so if you have a 6 month goal, you get clear on where you want to be after month one. What needs to be true for you to achieve that milestone at month one so that you're on track for your 6 month goal? That's precisely where so many people fail, is because they never do that planning. They never put in the process. They never think about, what's the next step? What am I doing week two? What am I doing at this milestone? They're just looking at the output, or the
Yeah.
the end goal. And if that's the only thing you're focused on, It goes back to that question you asked me: how do we stay disciplined? Well, if the only thing you're thinking about is that end goal and you've got no system, you've got no process, you've got no plan, yeah, you're right. What are you staying disciplined to? It's just a bunch of randomness and a bunch of activity that you're generating, hoping that you maybe get to the goal one day, which then makes it so easy for you to get knocked off track. That's why there's a 95% failure rate on the personal growth and development goals that we get most excited about.
I believe that that's very true. And talking about goals, I mean, from my own understanding, I believe that a lot of times we need help also in setting our goals, because sometimes we could be setting goals that might not be realistic. Some are realistic, and sometimes it could be shooting for the stars, and we end up being frustrated by these kind of goals at the end of the day. So I do like some practices that we could put in place for setting goals so that we can actually achieve them.
Yeah. There's a couple of things we can think about, and one, I'm just a big believer in the SMART goal system, right? And so, any goal that you have, we just talked a moment ago around asking that immediate next question of what needs to be true for me to achieve it. But the one thing that you can do to help ensure that a goal fails is to keep it vague, to keep it abstract. If we just think about two examples, going back to the New Year's resolution, I want to lose weight is very different than I want to lose 25 pounds by the next 90 days. And then after that, I want to start losing 1 pound per month. And so I say all that's because the more specific, the more clear, the more crisp you can make your goal, the better. And I know of no better way to do that than the SMART system. So if we just think of the word SMART, SMART, the S stands for specific. So make sure the goal is specific. M stands for measurable. Make sure that you can measure and track your goal. Another key element to why goals fail is because people have no way, especially with a vague, abstract goal, they have no way to measure progress. So you wake up at 8 a.m. on Tuesday. Am I ahead? Am I on plan? Or am I behind? If you don't have a system at which you can actively track and measure, you're going to be in trouble. The A stands for achievable. Just like you mentioned, if I want to make $1 million in the next 30 days, that's going to be very, very tough, tough to achieve for the average person. So don't set a goal so far in the stratosphere where day one it's not even realistic. It's not even achievable. So make sure that it's achievable. The R is something that I've replaced, and I think any good goal, makes you want to reach out of your comfort zone, makes you want to get a little uncomfortable. Because if you're able to achieve a goal and not even leave the comfort zone, is it really a goal, or would it have happened anyways? So make sure your goal stretches you, that it pulls you forward, that it gets you out of your comfort zone. So make sure that there's a reach element to your goal. And then lastly, the T, very important, make sure it's time specific. So whatever goal you have, when is the buy when date? Don't leave it open ended. Don't say it's, I eventually want to lose this weight, get this promotion, whatever it is. Buy when. Hold yourself accountable to a date and allow your plan to be your working backwards system that starts today and ends with you achieving that goal on that date that you set. So if you use that SMART system, it's a great way to make sure your goals are really vivid and specific.
You talked about comfort zone, and that's something that is very that touches a lot of us, basically comfort zone. And it's very easy to say leave your comfort zone, set a goal that stretches you out of your comfort zone. But how do we actually successfully leave our comfort zone? What do we have to do to leave that comfort zone of ours? Because it's very comforting, it draws you in all the time. What can I do to resist that inertia, force of
Yeah,
inertia?
so I've got two responses to that I think about a lot. I use personally, and the two words that come to mind is perfection and failure. And first with failure, right? And so it's easy, especially the more experienced and the more successful we become, to want to stay in the comfort zone, right? We don't want to take the risk. We don't, we have status now. People are looking at us now, right? So the fear of failure, it actually increases as we kind of move up the ladder. And so we're so afraid of failing. We're so afraid of people seeing us make a bad move. We're so afraid of going back into uh, the learning zone, or a beginner's mindset. We don't want people to see us suck at something, right? So what
Mm,
that really does is push us back in the comfort zone because we don't want to be uncomfortable. Um, so my advice or my recommendation is change your definition on what failure is. So instead of thinking about failure as not achieving, as coming up short of, you put whatever label you want on it, but don't make failure to be some negative thing. Instead, what happened if we started to define failure as not trying? So just think about what your life would look like if failure meant, instead of not achieving something, to not trying something. We would all
mm,
be leaving the comfort zone. We would all be trying new things. We would all be taking new risks. We would all be launching those businesses that we know we want to launch in our head. So I think that's the first word, is
mm,
failure, in changing our perspective and the definition that we have for failure. And number two is perfection. We are wired to want to make the sure bet, right? We want the clouds to part. We want the sure thing.
yeah.
We want to make that investment that's going to be a guaranteed winner. We want to make the bet that's it's gonna guaranteed hit. And so what keeps us in the comfort zone is waiting for that perfect opportunity.
Mm,
Got a news flash for you: there are no perfect opportunities. So people waiting for that perfect moment, that perfect opportunity, that perfect time, wait their entire lives for something that doesn't even exist. So
mm,
everything we do is some variation of imperfect actions. And so, very, very similar to what we just talked about with failure, get the notion out of your mind of waiting for that perfect moment, because it's not going to show up. And instead, start getting comfortable with taking imperfect action. Is everything going to be lined up? Is everything going to be set up for you? Is it going to feel great? No, it's going to feel uncomfortable. Anytime, growth by design is not meant to feel comfortable. So don't ever confuse yourself in thinking that growth and comfort can coexist with each other. They don't, and
mm,
they can't. And so when you can get comfortable with taking imperfect action, learning from that, increasing your competence, which increases confidence, and it's only going to give you the fuel to take more imperfect action, then more imperfect action. But if all you're doing is sitting back and waiting for the perfect move to make, you're going to stay in the comfort zone forever. So those are two things that I really lean on heavily with not only myself personally, but with my clients, of
mm,
really changing the perspective around failure. Failure and success are not opposite. Failure is part of the journey of success. And then don't wait for the perfect pitch. There is no perfect pitch. Get out there and start taking imperfect action. You do those two things, I promise you, leaving the comfort zone will be easier than it ever has been.
What I do from that right now is basically, if you want to grow, if you want to succeed in life, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and being imperfect. And that's the only way to go, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. If
Yeah.
not, you're going to fall for the illusion that the comfort zone provides, right? So
Mm,
think about why you're staying in the comfort zone for whatever reason, whatever area of your life. Is because there's an illusion of security. There's an illusion of safety. There is an illusion of stability that people crave. They don't want to be rocking the boat. They don't want to feel uncomfortable. They don't want to feel stretched and challenged. But the
Mm,
one thing the comfort zone will never admit to you is that there is no growth that lives there. So if
mm,
you fall for the illusion of comfort and safety today, you're going to wake up one day looking back saying, "Ooh, I never lived up to my full potential. I never played my best game. I never achieved my best version because I fell for that story the comfort zone was telling me." And that's exactly how regret starts showing up in your life. And so
mm,
we there's going to be two different pains in life. It could be the pain of being uncomfortable and taking on challenges today, or you can have the pain of regret in the future. You pick. You
yeah.
can't avoid you can't avoid both.
Yeah, you mean we have to go through one pain or the other. So you have to choose the pain you have to go through.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Eh, wow. That's painful. Yeah. I mean, while preparing for this conversation, I came across this 70-20-10 mindset rule. And I really want you to enlighten us on this and how we could use that to achieve our goals or maybe even invest in our future success also.
Yeah, yeah. This is something that I've been noticing really over the past 10 years as I started to really embrace and became a student of mindset. Kind of going back to that quote, right? Whether you think you can or think you can't, you will always be right. So, one of the things that I began to notice was on every team, in every group, and in just about every single room, the 70-20-10 mindset rule generally applied everywhere. So, first, let's start with the 20%. I think we've all heard about the definitions now of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And starting with that 20%, this is going to be the group that most closely aligns with a fixed mindset. Let's just call it the status quo mindset. They'll be open and honest with you that they don't like change. They don't want things to change. They want things to remain the same. They don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to be challenged. There could be a lot of good reasons for that. I mean, if you think of someone who's maybe closer to retirement versus at the early stage in their career, they're not showing up looking to learn and develop and do new things. They want to coast. They want things to be normal, consistent, not changing. That's fine. But that's going to generally be about 20% of every single room. People that identify with that type of, let's just call it, they're allergic to change and evolution. They want things to stay the same. Let's look at 70% of the room now. This is going to be the group that when you talk about a growth mindset and ask who identifies with it, their hands will go up. Without fail, every time I speak or give a presentation and I ask the question, who identifies with a growth mindset? Who has that belief that with the right amount of time, energy, and effort, you can enhance your capabilities. You can learn new skills. You can improve your intelligence. You can overcome obstacles. 70% at least of the room, hands go up. But
Mm,
here's what I found that was really interesting is when you really look at the people that are raising their hands in that 70%, you look at what they're doing, you examine their actions, you look at their habits, their routines. They act a lot like that 20% group. They may be saying the right things. You go on LinkedIn, they're posting all the right things, but they're not taking a whole lot of action behind that belief. And so that brings me to the 10% group. These are the people that they may have the same success, they may have the same backgrounds as everybody else in the room, but they are actively investing in their growth. They don't care about what they've already achieved. They don't care about the success they've already had. They're interested in finding out what more are they capable of. They are pushing to find out, you know, to take on those new challenges, to reach their next best version. They're okay with failure. They're okay with being uncomfortable because they know that's what growth looks like. So, where that 70% group that identifies with the growth mindset, they may not admit it to you out loud, but they know deep down they're not playing their best and biggest game. They know that. They know that they're a little too content with status quo. The 10%, the performance mindset group, they are. They are actively investing. They are stretching themselves. Yes, there may be some failures, but they're showing up and taking on the big challenges that always lead to growth. And so the big difference is with that 10% group versus the others is the bias for action. They're not holding back, they're not staying in the comfort zone. They're actively in growth mode, taking on new experiences that help them grow. That's always going to be the big differentiator with that 10% group.
Yeah. And I want to belong to this 10% group. And I believe everyone who is listening also wants to be in this 10% group. And that's why I would love you, Aaron, to like educate us more on the performance mindset. And I also found out about the 3 out success formula. So if you could combine this together for us so that we could get to the 10% and
Yeah.
become, high performance, basically, that would be great.
Yeah, and it's I'm glad you asked the question that way because they go hand in hand. So if you were to look at that 10% group and really examine what specifically are they doing differently than those other groups? Why are they continuing to find new level of success after new level after new level? And as I kind of examined this, what I refer to as the 10 percenters, I wanted to distill it down into a formula. Like, can I find the common threads here? And if I can help people check these boxes, it's the quickest way to get into the 10% and stay in a growth mode. And so what I discovered was across the board, they all did three things. One, they out prepared everyone around them. They were never going to be the ones showing up unprepared, not doing their homework, haven't done the due diligence. How many times have you showed up for a meeting and they're the ones running in late? They were late for work, they overslept, whatever it was. That doesn't happen with these 10 percenters. They're always prepared. They've always got their I's dotted, their T's crossed. And in the event that a worst case scenario happens, they've already thought about it. They've already planned for it. So being prepared means being prepared for worst case scenario. And this group is always going to be the ones that out prepare everyone around them. Number two is they outwork everyone around them. And let me clarify what I mean by that. It's not a number of hours worked in a week. They don't walk around saying that I just logged 80 hours. It really comes down to productivity and output. So, what they've been able to do is really find leverage that other people haven't. Look, we all have only 24 hours in a day. No matter where in the world you live, this is a universal truth for all of us. There's no people out there that have been able to buy a 30-hour day or 35-hour day. So it really comes down to what are you doing with your day? And if it's you're simply just working harder, that's not going to cut it. You're going to get to a certain point in your career where you look around, everybody works hard. That's how everybody got in the room. But what this 10% group does is they found the leverage. They've found a way to maximize the outputs with the same amount of inputs, whether it's through delegation, whether it's through outsourcing, whether it's through having their teams leverage up. They just find a way to produce more than everyone around them. And then the third one, and this is the big one, they outlearn everyone around them. It's so common to see successful professionals after they've had success to kind of go back into a comfort zone. They stop growing, they stop developing, they stop learning. They think they've arrived, they think they have it all figured out, they think they're the smartest ones in the room. That doesn't happen with this 10% group. They stay in learning mode and they're looking to learn from everybody at all levels at all times. So, as Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger say, these are the people that are learning machines. They're always in growth mode. So when you combine those three things, I- I'll ask you, have you ever seen someone who consistently out prepares, outworks, and outlearns everyone around them and has not found success?
No,
I've
I've
yet
not
to
seen
find
it.
an example.
That's great. I mean, it takes a lot of work. It requires a lot of work and dedication and discipline to do this. But once one is on that f- formula, and one is on that system, using that system, one will be successful in life. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and for the audience and the listeners, all you got to do is turn that around as a question on you, right? At the end
mm,
of each one of your days,
mm,
ask an honest question of yourself. Did I out prepare? Did I outwork? And did I outlearn my peers today? And if you can't honestly answer that question, yes, what can you do starting tomorrow to make sure that tomorrow night you can start answering yes? Because again, we're all thinking you can't find any examples that of someone who's done this consistently hasn't found success. So if you've got an undefeated formula that we know works, then it just comes down to the discipline. There's your
mm,
process. There's your system. So the big question to your audience is, can you stay disciplined to check those three boxes every single day? If you
yeah.
can, you're going to have growth and success. Not a maybe, not an if, but
Mm,
it's almost a guarantee that we can make you today if you can stay disciplined. So, yeah, it's a great way to tie it all together is using the discipline to execute this system. And if you do, you're giving yourself an incredible, overwhelming probability of greater success.
yes. And Aaron, I would just like to, mention it out to the listeners out there. This is only for those who want to be extraordinary. This is only for those who want to be in that 10%. Because in the course of recording this podcast, I've heard from people in comment sessions or feedback that say, "Oh, I'm also comfortable with just doing the normal thing and living a normal life and staying in my comfort zone. And I don't understand why I have to outwork someone, outperform somebody, or do anything extra, basically." Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, look, the only thing I can say to that is while I can't understand why, I can respect that decision, right? But um, yeah, I think is if you have that, if that's your mindset, you just have to realign the expectations, right? And
Mm,
so if you only want to do what the average people or below average people do, if that's the level of effort you're putting in, it would be foolish to then expect to be able to generate better results or better than average results, right? So everything in life has a cost. So if that's going to be your approach, if that's going to be your mindset, you've just got to align your expectations of you're only going to see average or below average results. And so if you're looking to be happy while doing that, you've got to bring down your expectations. Too many people do the things that average people or below average people do, yet expect and hope for better results than everybody else. And that's where friction and unhappiness starts to set in. So, nothing wrong with wanting to be average. Just know you're not going to see better than average results. That's something that you're going to have to live with.
yeah. Thanks for that clarification. That's good. And are they like right now we've talked about success, what to do in order to achieve success, achieve your goals in life. But once we've gotten to that level already of succeeding and staying successful also, are there like some downside to it? Are there some things we have to pay attention to when we're already on that? We're already consistent with our system and disciplined and all of that. Are there things that we have to actually, put in mind or that could go wrong or could be the disadvantage of being so successful?
Yeah, I think, look, there's a downside to success, right? I think success can be the very thing that prevents you from being more successful. And the one thing that I would say about that is know what you're chasing and what you're pursuing and why you're pursuing it. Make sure you're very clear on that. Because the one thing I like to warn, especially high performers, is that more is not a strategy. More money, more status, more type, more is not going to be a strategy. If you're chasing after something you don't really need or don't even really want, you're never going to have enough. You're just going to be that hamster on the wheel that keeps running and running and running. And as soon as you grab and catch what it is that you're searching for, it's going to feel empty. It's when winning is going to stop feeling like winning. It's kind of like the dog who chases the car. Well, what happens when the dog catches it? What the hell is he going to do once the fender's in his mouth? He has no idea. Doesn't even know why he's chasing it, right? So don't be
Yeah.
the dog chasing the car. Um, have a strong why. Know why you're doing it, why you're chasing, why you're pursuing. Because when you have a strong enough why, you're always going to figure out how. And when you have a strong enough why, you'll know exactly how much of and how little of to give up to chase it. The biggest thing that, and I've experienced this firsthand, is when you give up too much happiness, family, relationships to chase success, only to feel that once you've achieved that success, the bill was too big. You wish you could go back and not give up and sacrifice and compromise everything you did just to achieve success. And I can tell you firsthand, the only thing that's more painful than not achieving a goal that you really want is achieving a goal that you didn't really want as a goal. um, so when your why is not clear and you achieve things that was the wrong goal, it's going to make you look back and say, I wish I would have done a lot of things differently. So I hope that answers the question of just kind of what to be on the lookout for, and just make
Yeah.
sure you maintain clarity on what you're chasing and why you're chasing it. Because again,
Yeah.
there's only one thing more painful than not achieving the goal you want, and that's achieving the goal that um, achieving the goal that you find out after the fact was the wrong goal.
I believe that. Yeah. What I'm taking away from that is basically I should make sure that my why is very clear, very big, and very obvious. For
Yeah.
me personally, I want a very big why.
Yeah, I've got a simple tool that can help you do that, and it's just basically a 3 question audit that you can ask yourself. Number one, how are you defining success for yourself? Not how it looks externally, not what it looks like on LinkedIn or Instagram, but you look yourself in the mirror. How are you defining success for you? Number two, what does happiness look like for you? Really get clear on that. Paint that picture. Make sure you get a great visual of what happiness looks like for you in the future. And then number three, when you have some clarity around those 2 questions, see whether they align with one another or whether they're in conflict with one another, because that will give you everything you need to know that if how you're defining success and how you're defining happiness are not able to be achieved at the same time, that's your indicator that you need to recalibrate. Your why is off somewhere, because if you're giving up all your happiness to chase success, it's not going to feel like success and whenever it is that you achieve it, because you've given up too much of this thing over here. And for all the people that think that I'll just be happy after I make this amount of money or I get this title or I'll be happy when, it never works that way. Happiness just doesn't show up after you achieve something. If you're not happy on the journey, you're not going to be happy at the destination. So ask yourself and be really honest with yourself about those 3 questions. How are you defining success? What does happiness look like for you? And do those 2 things align?
Yeah, do those things in line. How do you define happiness? And yeah, I mean, if you had to answer that question, what would the answer be? Like, how would you define happiness? Just as a closing remark.
Ooh, for me, happiness is, really how I kind of think about high performance, right? I want to be a high performing individual. And for me, what that looks like is high performing across all of my jobs. And I say
Mm.
jobs loosely, it's because I'm much more than just the founder of performance mindset coaching, but my job's also to be healthy. My job's also to be a great husband to my wife. My job's also to be a great father of my kids. So when I think about high performance, and being, what makes me happy is to not be good at one or two of those things and sacrifice the other two, but it's to be consistently making continuous progress in each and every single one of those areas. That is when, at the end of the day, I feel like I'm I'm making progress and thriving at work, on my health, in my marriage, and with my kids. That's how I define happiness.
Yes, having a well-rounded life. Yeah, yeah. And I'm
Right.
so happy you mentioned your program already. I would like you to tell us the best way to connect with you and to work with you, and also engage in the performance mindset coaching programs that you offer.
Yeah, yeah. So the best way to find out more about how you can work with me and what that would look like would be going to the website. That's performancemindsetcoaching.co. Um, and also to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, constantly sharing leadership and personal development, tools, programs, frameworks, and concepts. So yeah, would love to connect with anyone there. And my job to my LinkedIn community is to try to deliver back as much value as I possibly can. So yeah, you'll see on the website the different ways we can work together, either in a one-on-one or in a group forum. So yeah, if there's any interest, would love to explore the conversation.
Awesome. I'm going to place the link to your website in the show notes of this episode. So I encourage everyone who has listened up to this point to click on the link, copy the link, reach out to Aaron. Even the information on the website, they are very, inspiring and very educative also. Thank you so much, Aaron. I really appreciate you being here today. I've learned so much from you from this conversation, and you lived up to the expectation. Like no stress, but you. So at the beginning of the conversation, we said, yeah. At the end of this conversation, I must be a better person. And yeah, I think I am.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. I
awesome,
appreciate it.
awesome.
Wow, you made it to the very end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'm grateful for your time, your love, and your contributions. Subscribe, like, review, and share this podcast. God bless you. Bye. Bye.